Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Binner to discuss some interesting news about Zelda Wii U, the new Star Fox game, and Mario Maker. So let's get started. Alright Derek, so kind of unexpectedly, some news has been coming out about some of Nintendo's upcoming titles, primarily from a recent interview that iJustine gave to Miyamoto, or had with Miyamoto I should say. And she actually asked some pretty interesting questions, and we actually got some pretty interesting answers as a result. So let's go ahead and start off with Zelda. We found out a few new details here, primarily about like how big the world is. Miyamoto specifically mentions that what they were looking to do is make, one big gigantic world, or one big connected world, where you no longer have to load different areas, like you had to do in Twilight Princess. And speaking of Twilight Princess, they actually equated it to taking the entire world of that game and making it just one area of this one, which is kind of gives you an idea of how big this world is. Because Twilight Princess had a huge world, taken all together, and that's apparently just one area in this game. And then they went on to mention that there's gonna be tons of things to do in the world. So like as you're traveling, like between dungeons, for instance, you may just get lost in some kind of side quest. And as part of that, they mentioned that they're designing this game to be kind of a pick up and play type of game, where you play for a little bit, then put it down, and come back again. Which is kind of interesting, because that's not exactly what my first thought is when I think of open world.
Well, the sheer size, when you put it down into terms like that, where one area is as big as the entire Twilight Princess, you're like, holy crap. Right. But then you see the map that they had in that demo, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can sort of see that. And it's just amazing that they've gone so big. But the crazier thing that they've said, I think, is what they said, second, where they're going to have tons of things for you to do, and there's going to be, filled with stuff. So much so that apparently you'll be able to just do pick up and play, which, I guess I can kind of see that with open world, where you just go in, do a couple side missions, and then call it a day. Kinda, but I don't know. When I think open world, I think exploring and checking out all this different stuff, which is obviously in there. But apparently they want to have enough smaller checkpoints or smaller things to do that you don't get bored. And that's one of the things that we've been concerned about in the previous times we've talked about Zelda Wii U, where it's just so open world that we just couldn't, would just be bored. Sort of like, Twilight Princess, where there's nothing to do in the overworld.
Right. So I'm definitely looking forward to the news that there will be lots of things to do. They kind of hinted at that a little bit in the Game Awards video, where they mentioned you can pick apples in this area, for instance, or apples grow on the trees here, suggesting they'll play a part in the game somehow. So it's good to hear that there will be at least some level of density to this world. Now, granted, we don't know exactly to what extent. Who knows how much they're just playing up some small feature of the game. But I really do hope there's a lot to do in that world. But yeah, the thing that really surprised me is the fact that they are aiming for a pick up and play type thing, which suggests to me that they're gonna have some easy way of either getting around the world or resuming progress in the world. And I feel like it all comes back to Epona. We already know she plays a huge role in getting around the world, and now I'm wondering if she might serve as kind of like you kind of touched on, having checkpoints. Maybe she's basically like a checkpoint, or where you save and you can resume from at that point in time. I feel like Epona might be playing a huge part in this game, where you can just pick up, or you just turn off the game, you resume from where you left off at.
Well, there's been always hints of that sort of thing with Epona, because this is the first time we've seen Epona equipped with actual gear.
Right.
Where you could basically almost see a camping set there. So maybe that's how you save and whatnot, is you just set up a camp and there you go. Or that's how you pass the time, or who knows. We still have very little details to go off of, but that does sort of hint at the possibility of allowing for that type of gameplay. It's more of a question now, is okay, they're saying that we'll have plenty to do. What will we have to do? Is it going to be just hunting for rupees? Is it going to be the typical? Of course, there'll probably be definitely the typical heart piece search. But is it going to be more like Majora's Mask, where it's all about the side quests and going for the heart pieces? Or is it going to have quite a few dungeons to find as well? Or will they combine the two and have side quest dungeons that you get the heart pieces in, and sort of do that way?
Well, and speaking of dungeons, they actually at one point mentioned, getting back to the whole pick up and play thing, that there may be times you're playing through one long dungeon, and then you may decide to go do something else. And the fact that they specifically mentioned a long dungeon, I do wonder if they might be working differently this time. Perhaps or I don't know, it's weird, because they have played the dungeons in, in different ways in the Zelda games. So it reminded me of Phantom Hourglass, how you had that one dungeon you kept coming back to. And I'm wondering if they may have something like that here, where there are these like long dungeons that perhaps you don't have to play through all in one sitting. But that's typically how they are in most Zelda games, right? I mean, you can leave a dungeon anytime you want, but they are designed primarily to be played through in a single go, with the exception of Phantom Hourglass. So do you think they may do something along the line of those lines here?
I really hope not, because I'm not a fan of the way they did it in Phantom Hourglass. It got so repetitious in that game to go through the same sections over and over again with just different time limits. Now, they improved upon that with Spirit Tracks, where you didn't have to repeat the sections quite as much. So maybe something along those lines. But I think they're talking, like, the sense I get is that they're talking about something completely new, a new way of dungeons. Maybe like there'll be branches to the paths of dungeons, and then dungeon will have 2 different treasures or 2 different things that you can do, and you can take different forks, and they'll lead to different things. But yeah, I mean, it'd be really cool to just see how much they expand this world and see how much you can do within it, because that's the thing with this open world, is that you can stumble upon anything and not have the appropriate stuff for it. So they're going to try to accommodate the dungeons for that sort of thing, and have and that's how they do the multiple pass type stuff. Or are you really going to have to come back with once you find the appropriate item? We really don't know, because this definitely seems like the least structured Zelda game we've had since the original, honestly.
Yeah, it really does, and that's, that is why it excites me. It is a risk, but I like them taking risks. That's more of what we need in Zelda games. So that basically covers it for Zelda, but next up we have a few new tidbits on Star Fox, coming to Wii U. Now, we basically know very little about this game, but Miyamoto did reveal a little bit more about how it's going to play. And that is specifically, on the Gamepad, you're going to see a first-person cockpit view of the game, whereas on the TV, you're going to have a third-person, more cinematic view, as they say, that basically provides a more cinematic look at what's happening. And to me, that actually reminded me a lot of what's happening in Captain Toad, when you're in the minecart levels, where you get the first-person view of throwing turnips on the gamepad, whereas on the TV you get like a third-person view of what's happening, which is actually pretty cool if you're a bystander. But when you're playing, the TV view is basically worthless. Like, you can't really do anything of worth on it. But before I, go on about this, do you have any thoughts on this, Derek?
Well, I have not played Captain Toad yet, but I have seen like little screens of how they handled the whole turnip throwing thing, which is sort of a problem with the gamepads. Like, the people watching on the TV will get a better view of things, and you're just stuck with the first person. And I'm not much of a first person player of stuff I find like with racing games or like flying games or stuff like that. I like seeing the ship because I can base where I'm at, and I don't, I just like having that visual. So when I'm really hoping when they say a cinematic view, they mean the traditional view of behind the R-wing. That way you can still see it. Maybe I'm really hoping for maybe it's just an option. Like, if you want to do first the cockpit view, you look at the gamepad. If you want to do the traditional Star Fox view, you look at the TV. Please let it be that.
That's what my take would be, and we have seen an image of the TV, with the camera behind the, that looks very similar like to the past Star Fox games, with the camera behind the R-Wing. But they specifically say in this interview, when you want to get serious, or when you want to get serious taking down enemies, you'll want to look at the gamepad for the cockpit view. And that's what really concerns me, because that's what you primarily do in Star Fox games. You're primarily shooting enemies while flying around. And I'm going to be looking at the optimal view to do that, and not, the one that gives you a cinematic view. Again, like Captain Toad. So that's why I'm concerned, because I don't want to play... So, okay, for me, I don't want to play Wii U games primarily on the gamepad. I want to play them primarily on the TV. Otherwise, why not make it a 3DS game or something, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to remain optimistic, that maybe this will work better than I'm expecting. But the fact that they put such an emphasis on the cinematic view is what really concerns me. Because in Captain Toad, it's a worthless feature for those levels. But it's just a small part of the game, so it's fine. Here, this is the game. Unless there's a huge twist that they haven't shown off yet. But, for Star Fox, you're flying around shooting enemies. I want to look at the TV, right? So, I mean, so maybe it is just what you're saying. It is just a classic Star Fox view. But I am very concerned when they specifically mention that the gamepad is where you want to look for when you want to get serious. That to me is just very concerning, because I don't like adjusting my view between two different screens to basically look at the same thing. I liked how like what Wind Waker HD did, where it did a whole, where the map or where the gamepad is used for a completely different purpose, being the map or your inventory. That's fine. Again, I don't want to pass judgment yet. It's just everything I've seen about this game is very concerning.
No, I totally get what you mean. There's a big red flag when they say something like that, and you're right. When it comes to the gamepad, like, you want to have some interesting uses for it, especially since it comes with the system. You typically should use it, but you don't want something like they're doing with Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, where you basically have to look at the gamepad the entire time in order to play the most efficiently. And if they're saying that's the case for Star Fox, that's might not be the best way for me that I want to play it. However, there's a second problem with this whole idea of the cockpit view on the gamepad and whatnot. Because aren't they saying that you'll be using the gamepad for controlling the plane? Like, as far as tilting it and whatnot?
No, I think you're right. I think they did talk about that a bit at E3. That, motion controls were involved with aiming in some way. Like, where you can aim independent of how, the direction you're flying in.
Exactly. How awkward is that going to be if you're in the cockpit and you're trying to aim this way, but you still have to look at the gamepad in order to see it?
Well, maybe that's the key to this. Like, maybe that's it, right? Maybe the gamepad's just providing that perpetual in front of you view, whereas tilting the gamepad, adjusts the view on the TV, and that's what allows you to more readily aim outside your limited gamepad viewpoint.
That could be, and that'd be a much more novel way of using the gamepad and the two different views of the action.
It would be. I mean, it would make sense. I'll be honest, the way I said that sounded kind of cool. Although I am just biased, but that's my concept of it. But I feel like that's still just going to annoy me in the game. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if other people have this. For me, when I'm switching views or switching between the screens, looking at the same thing, it disorients me. Like, I get briefly confused with what's happening in that world, in that space. Mm-hmm. Which isn't something I had with Wind Waker, because you have that persistence on the TV and the gamepad does its own thing, like pressing pause to go to a menu. But if you're looking at two different versions of the same thing, that just throws me off. And that's not what I want in a fast-paced game like Star Fox.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it'll work here. Now, something else that interests me is the fact that they mention cinematic as well. And that's not something Nintendo often mentions. In fact, one of the few times I can think of them talking about it before is with the original Star Fox 64, which is one of the first games they had that had a heavy emphasis on cinematics. I forget what the exact number was, but it had maybe like 20-30 minutes of cutscenes. That's something they drew attention to. So I wonder if that's something that they're aiming to do here, like have a big emphasis on cutscenes. Like, what if while you're flying around, playing on the gamepad, maybe the camera will cut between different things on the TV to show different things happening. Kind of like in Metal Gear Solid 4, like when you're in the microwave tunnel, as you're crawling through it, there was a smaller camera on top, or a smaller screen that would show different things happening in the world, like different characters talking to you, or different viewpoints of things relevant to the action happening in the tunnel.
Mm-hmm. That'd be a nice touch to it. I'm not sure if it'll go that route or not, but it's definitely a nice way of evolving the formula of Star Fox cinematics.
I will say the one thing that leaves me optimistic is how excited Miyamoto seems to be talking about it. It's been a little while. Miyamoto doesn't have that much of a hands-on process with with individual games these days. Like, he's more of an overall general supervisor now, it seems. But he's taking a much more active role in this one, and that is what excites me. Miyamoto is basically a god among game developers. And it's been a while since we've seen him have this level of involvement with the title, as far as I can tell, or as far as we know. So that is what excites me. Like, I am very curious to see what he does here, and hopefully his ideas pay off.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Alright, well, finally we got some more news on Mario Maker. Nothing earth-shattering, but basically we finally had confirmation for sure it will have an online component, which, as we expected, it has to, where you will be able to share levels with other people, and there will be, but perhaps the more important thing is there will be a popularity ranking as well, where you can see, how levels rank, in terms of popularity. And I imagine they'll have a few different options there, such as like maybe amount of downloads, or I'm guessing there'll be some kind of review as well, like giving a level 1 to 3 stars, for instance. Now, on top of that, they also went on to mention that you'll be able to see what happens when other people play your levels, and what happens when you play on other people's levels. And I'm kind of curious what they mean by that. Like, that's a very interesting thing to say, right? So that to me means they'll have some kind of replay feature. And I can't help but wonder they might have some kind of feature, like, in Meat Boy, when you died a whole bunch of times, you see all those replays.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder they might have a feature where you can see, like, the outlines of different people playing your level at once. Kind of like the ghost feature on Mario Kart, by having a whole bunch of them at the same time.
Well, we've already seen something like that, because that's out of this news, that's the part that excites me most, is seeing how people play through your level,
right,
and where they run into trouble or where they have problems or stuff like that. And we've already seen before that Mario Maker does have a shadow feature showing where you land when you play through the game and play through the level. We saw that in E3 demo. So in my mind, it's just them doing an overlay for players in the same situation. And to me, I think this is either a way, like, there's two ways to look at this, and probably both ways will apply. One is just seeing how people do in your level, just seeing, like, if you made it really hard and you want to see people lose at it, you can watch people just die over and over and over again, like Super Meat Boy. However, if you want to try to make your levels better and actually improve upon them so they actually make it more playable but still fun and challenging, it's almost a way of playtesting the game.
That's true. Well, yeah, I guess, so that brings up a good point. Will you be able to update levels once you posted them online? Or will you have to repost it as a new level?
That's the question. If you can edit the level after you post it and just sort of, update it to it once it's on there, that'd be a brilliant way of, like, seeing where people have faults with. Maybe people are giving it 1 star. And you're like, no, I really like this level. I like this idea. I need to make it work better. And you can watch where people are having trouble with, read their comments, and update it and make it even better for them. So that'd be
really cool.
Yeah, it'd be a really cool level of interactivity between the creators and the people who actually play the levels. It'd be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good way to tie it in the Miiverse, where, each level, or hopefully a game, or Mario World, as we've been calling it, or playlist. Basically, if you can link the levels, it'd be awesome if each one of those got its own, like, Miiverse community, kind of like the communities on Mario Kart, where you can share your thoughts, about the Mario world or Mario level specifically, and then the creator could take that feedback and make it better. And what would be really cool is if people have already downloaded those levels, is if they, like, get an update being like, hey, this game you downloaded or already played through, it's got an update. Try it again and see what you think.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, especially if the people get notified, and they can see. It's like, all right, I'll take a look and see what they've changed anything or made anything better, and yeah, it'd be almost a fascinating look into the world of playtesting games and seeing how to, like, make those changes and seeing how things can be better or whatnot. And sometimes maybe that's not your intention. Maybe you did want to have the hardest level possible, and you find that people are having too easy of a trouble. So, okay, I'm going to remove this thing here, put this instead, and such, and make it interesting. I think that makes the game so much more interesting in my mind. It's just so much you could do with it, especially if you can edit. If that editing feature is there, I don't know, this game could be something familiar in the form of, there's always been a lot of level creating games, but also something special, because I'm not sure how many of those games actually allow you to edit something you've posted once you've posted it.
Finally, there's just one more thing I want to bring up, and that is the fact that they also touched on Amiibo support in this interview from iJustine, and that is they mentioned that both Zelda and Star Fox will have Amiibo support. Now, they gave no more ideas beyond that, but, I figured maybe we'll have some ideas for what they could do. And I actually have none. I don't know. With Star Fox, maybe they could. I don't know. You
could change your ships is the only thing I could think of. Instead of the R-wing, you're flying one of the Wolfins.
That'd be cool. That actually could be cool. Where maybe there's decals you could add to the ships based on character amiibo.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Now Zelda's the one that has me concerned, because as we've already talked about, or will talk about in the upcoming end of the year discussion, so future discussion spoilers. I am a little bit concerned about DLC in a Zelda game. And Amiibo is basically another form of DLC, potentially, not always, as we saw in Smash Brothers. So I wonder what they could do here. If it takes the place of unlockables, that to me could be a little bit concerning, right? I don't know. It kind of, that's where it starts to break down the fourth wall a little bit.
I think they might go as simple as possible for this one. It might even work exactly how they did with Hyrule Warriors, where you unlocked a weapon if you had the Link Amiibo, but if you use any of the others, you get items.
Yeah.
And rupees and stuff like that. So maybe it's just be an easy way to get rupees or some such per day, or something simple like that. To me, as of right now, it doesn't affect me that much because I'm not quite sure how they could do it. It could be as simple as costumes, but from everything we've seen so far when it comes to the amiibos, the stuff they unlock is not important whatsoever. So that's why I don't really have much concern with, like, oh no, there could be something really cool hidden behind it. No, I don't care.
But it kind of is important in Hyrule Warriors, though, isn't it?
You can get the spinner weapon, and yeah, it's cool to have, but it's not like it's a necessity. It really doesn't matter that much. It doesn't come across as a big deal to me.
It's interesting when you put it that way, because maybe within the context of Hyrule Warriors that's true, but within the context of a Zelda game, they did the same thing, that would have huge implications, I would think. Like, far larger than what it seems like it would in Hyrule Warriors.
Yeah, that's true. Now, they could go as simple as, like, palette swaps for the different weapons. So instead of, like, a hook shot in this game, it's actually the claw shot or something as simple as that. That's a very simple idea, but that sort of thing. Maybe they can give Link different costumes, that sort of thing. There's ways they can give, like, bonus content will be cool, but not a necessity to the game itself.
Mm-hmm. I guess for me, like, in a Zelda game, Zelda games are meant to be immersive, so I don't want something that directly impacts the gameplay, perhaps unfairly. Like, if something's going to affect the gameplay balance, that's what I'd be concerned about. If it's a small feature of the game, though, or if it's purely secondary content, maybe that'll work.
No, I don't think they're going to do anything in the same vein as, like, pre-order DLC, where it's like, here's a super awesome gun that you can use right away, and there's our new game, so you can basically break the game for yourself and get through stuff as quick as possible. Mm-hmm. No thanks. That's always been a no thanks to me, because it breaks what the game was intended to do. I want to have a pretty typical experience the first time I play a game. I don't want to go through and just destroy everything. Yeah. And so that same sort of idea applies to you. It applies for the new Zelda. It's like, not like, hey, you can have the Master Sword right away and kill everything in the first half of the game with no problem at all. People already complain about Zelda being too easy, and no thanks.
Yeah, it could maybe work as like a second quest type thing, where they maybe do unlock stuff that would be used in a second quest, where it doesn't really matter what happens. Who cares if it's easier second time through, right?
Yeah, no, that's possible. So, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what they could do. There's a lot of possibilities, and I don't think they're going to do anything that would break the integrity, for lack of a better word, of the game.
Yep, I hope not. But at the least, I'm curious to see what they do here. And that really applies to this whole interview. Even though we got, a fair amount of tidbits from it, it just leaves us with more questions. So if anything, I'm even more curious to see what they're going to show off at E3, which thankfully is still 6 months away. Alright, well that wraps up for us here, so thanks guys for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, which you can find links to in the description below. It's a good way to keep up to date on everything we post, and of course keep an eye on GameXplain.com for more on all these games we mentioned, and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.